Hey guys, I'm so sorry I am not down in SoCal with y'all this summer. I really miss you guys and I hope y'all are having the most wonderful summer ever. And since I'm not going to be down there with you guys, I'm hoping that you could do Miss Ina a favor. And when I ask questions in this video, I'm going to want to be able to hear your beautiful voices answering them from all the way up here in Oregon. Does that sound good? That was our test. I hope you all said yes. I'm going to assume that you guys are answering all throughout this video. So for those of you who don't know, the reason that I am up here in Oregon instead of down in Southern California with you is because Mr. Wilson is at the coast working on research. I'm actually studying something called kelp. Do you guys know what kelp is? Okay, I heard you guys. I think some of you should know what kelp is because I've taught about it the past couple of years. But in case you need a refresher, I'm going to teach about kelp and sea otters and kelp forests today. And I think it's going to be very fun. First off, I'd like to share my favorite fact about kelp, which is, did you know that kelp isn't actually a plant? Yeah, isn't that crazy? Even though it's green and it eats sunlight for its energy, it's not a plant at all. It's a different kind of creature called algae, which is the same stuff you see in rivers and in like lakes. And it's the green stuff that isn't really plant, like it doesn't have leaves or anything. It just kind of is like hair almost. But in the ocean, kelp has to be a little different than hair. It has to be stronger and more able to survive waves and currents and the rough ocean water bashing it back and forth. And today, I'm going to be teaching about kelp forests. But before I get into kelp forests, I wanted to share just a little bit about what I was researching this summer. Because although kelp does live in forests like this one right here, it also lives on the rocks like this here. Isn't it so interesting how different the two kelps look? The ones in the ocean are so big and strong and they move with the waves, but the ones on the rocks, they can be a lot smaller and they can look all sorts of different colors and shapes and sizes. And that's because on the rocks, the waves hit them a lot more differently than they do in the deep water. And so although I'm teaching about kelp forests, which are the big kelps in the deep ocean, those are kelp forests. I'm studying intertidal kelps. Can you guys say intertidal? I think I heard you. Could you try it one more time? Can you guys say intertidal? Okay, that's pretty good. That's a very hard word. But the kelps that are on the rocks are called intertidal kelps because they're in between the tides, which is at the ocean. The tides are where the ocean rises from really low to really high throughout the day. And it goes back to low and it back to high. And that pattern of going up and down is called tides. And in this up and down, there are rocks like these here that can hold fish and crabs and creatures like that, but also they have kelp that grows on them. I'm studying two species of kelp that live on the rocks. One is called winged kelp, and it looks like this. And one is called sea cabbage, and it looks like this. And I'm looking at whether they play nice in the winter or not. And if one chokes out the other and keeps it from growing, or if they can live together safely without hurting each other. But that's enough about intertidal kelps. Do you remember what intertidal kelps are again? Miss Ina, you should make sure that they know what intertidal kelps are by the end of this video. Because I bet you guys were listening very well and will remember. But on the other hand, we have kelp forests, and those are those big, big kelps, the ones that you'll find on the beach when you go. They're the long strands, and they've got little bulbs and blades. That's the things that look like leaves that come off of them. And those bulbs are called gas bladders. Can you say gas bladders? Yeah, gas bladders. And they're filled with gas because they're gas bladders. And that gas keeps them afloat in the water. That's why when you see pictures of them, they're standing like this. It's because they're floating in the water. And because they float so well, they're very, very good homes for baby sea creatures and schools of fish, and especially all of y'all's favorite sea creatures, the sea otter. Do you guys remember what sea otters are? Yeah, I hope you remember what sea otters are, but if you don't, I'm going to tell you all about them because they're really cool creatures. Sea otters look like this, and they are they're not deep sea. They're mammals that live near the shore. So not deep sea at all. They live near the shore, and they swim in the kelp forests. And because the kelps float like the way they do, what they'll do is, like right here, they have their babies and they wrap their babies in the floating kelp and leave them there while they dive for food. That way the babies don't float off and they're all safe. But what do those sea otters eat? Well, sea otters, they go down and they dive down into the kelp forests all the way down to the bottom of the kelp. And there they find things called sea urchins. This is what a sea urchin looks like. Little prickly purple balls of spikes. And what those little purple balls of spikes do, they live at the bottom of the ocean and they eat the holdfasts of the kelp. Can you guys say holdfast? Yeah, a holdfast is the part of the kelp at the very bottom, the part that holds fast to the rock. Here's a picture. This is what they look like, those holdfasts. And those holdfasts get eaten by sea urchins, those spike balls. Those spike balls come onto the holdfast and they eat them and they knock the kelp loose. And if you knock a whole bunch of kelp loose, what happens? Well, yeah, you no longer have a kelp forest anymore. So instead, you've got a whole bunch of floating kelp, which is what ends up on the beach. The kelp that you guys see when you go to the beach, that's from getting knocked out of the kelp forests. And so those sea otters, they'll grab those urchins, they'll swim up to the top, and they will snack on those sea otters. And the sea otters are really smart. So instead of just trying to eat those spiky things themselves, because they couldn't, they would get really hurt if they tried to eat those spiky things. Because if you ate a spike ball, it would hurt, right? So instead, they put them on their stomachs. Just like in this picture. And then they will take a rock and they will smash open the sea urchin so that you break through their big shells and you can get to the meat inside, and then they can eat, and then they can feed their babies that they left all wrapped up in the floating kelp. And so that's how the sea urchins protect kelp forests. And those kelp forests, by being so dense, that means having a whole bunch of them in one spot, because there's so many kelp in one spot making that beautiful forest, we are able to protect creatures that live inside of it. Because big things like sharks, those sharks that want to come and eat the fish, well, they can't eat the fish because every time they try to swim in, they get tangled up in the kelp, and the little fish can just swim away in between the kelp. But the big sharks, those big fish, they can't fit between those kelp. So that's how the sea urchins protect the kelp, and that's how the kelp protect the fish, and that's what makes our beautiful kelp ecosystem. And that's just what it means when there's a whole bunch of life living together. Isn't God's creation beautiful? All right, I hope to talk to you guys later today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week learning about the ocean. Bye, guys.